It was just TV dinners and yogurt. I always
Yeah.
like to tell the story that, yogurt was a left-wing, very outside food.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. There are some businesses that are integral in the fabric and story of a community. Think about the town you live in. If someone says, "What are some things I have to do when I visit?" you immediately think of those businesses. Maybe it's a dive bar in a back alley, an ice cream shop that has handmade old-fashioned vanilla, but you have to specifically ask for it. A barber shop that only does high fades, a music venue where every good band played before they got famous. But where should I eat when I go to that town, your friends will ask. A good restaurant, or 2 or 5 or 10, aren't just threads in the fabric of a town, they're a whole cross-section. Until your town has a perfect place to eat, it's just plain not a town yet. Our guest today is the owner of one such eatery. Anyone who knows anything about Bloomington, Indiana is going to insist that you eat at his place at least once while you're here. In the 1970s, you would stumble into the Uptown Café after a long night listening to music at the Bluebird. You'd order gumbo or jambolia to soak up all the booze. But now, 40 years later, Michael Cassady has refined the dining experience. His place seats 250 people now instead of 40. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are served, and they close at 10 o'clock. Much to Michael's happiness. Michael sees his restaurant as a kind of urban work of art, and anyone who's spent a moment inside couldn't agree more. On today's show, Michael shares the story of the Uptown Café. We're glad you joined us. So let's take you backwards a little bit, way backwards.
Okay.
And if you think about, when you were a kid growing up, what story or moment might have built a little bit of a foundation for who you ended up being as an adult?
Well, I came from Fort Wayne, Indiana. From a young age, I always was in love with Louisiana and Louisiana cooking. And there was a guy on PBS named Justin Wilson. And I just loved to watch the guy. I mean, he was funny. He went through all aspects of Louisiana cooking, from street food to haute cuisine and big flavors. And it's kind of been a love affair ever since.
Huh.
When I came here to Bloomington in 1967, I graduated from high school. I came here, I was a political science major. Didn't really have any grasp on what I really wanted to do. It was the 60s and early 70s, so a lot of tumult in the world and in the United States. And I finished school, but I worked a lot while I was going to school. I cooked at the Office Lounge. I cooked at the Dow. I cooked at the New Age Deli. I cooked at the Vienna Doghouse. I cooked at the Gables under one of my partners, Spiridon Strategos. Had a very nice kind of a restaurant before its time, Mediterranean restaurant that I think would still do very well. But I cooked a lot around town and just decided, a friend of mine kept pushing me to start my own place. And so I bought a little diner up on North Walnut next to the Bluebird for $10,000 on contract. Probably had 30 seats at the most. And, I kind of modeled it. My dream was there was a diner in New York City called the Empire Diner, a really sleek diner by the Empire State Building. So I thought, I'm going to just do breakfast and stay open late for the bar crowd. And one thing led to another, and that was kind of the beginning of the Uptown Café.
Huh. So take me back to that early part where you're watching. Tell me again the name of the Louisiana Chef Guy.
His name was Justin Wilson.
And you're living in northern Indiana.
Correct.
So were you getting a taste of that flavor? Did your parents cook in a Louisiana style or anything like that? Or you
No,
just really
not at all. I mean, I think my grandfather was a pretty good cook, but he didn't really cook in any kind of Louisiana style.
Huh.
I was probably more enamored with the entertainment of the guy and his love of cooking in general.
Yeah.
Louisiana, as far as the technicalities of the cooking, came later. When I came down here and was kind of searching for an identity, I had opened the Uptown. I was 26,
Yeah.
and it was 1976. And at that time, the guy that really that I loved so much was Paul Prudhomme, the great chef, really real Cajun man. Family, I think, of 13 children. Really learned most of his cooking from his mother, but went to France and throughout Europe and cooked a lot. But he was just a soulful cook and a lover of what he did. So I really studied him, his cookbooks. The Uptown initially got so busy to start, I couldn't really go to cooking school.
Yeah.
So I just stuck and taught myself. I bought the whole series of the California Culinary Institute and just kind of schooled myself on all the basics. And I was young and just thought I could do it and kept plugging away at it. I mean, I didn't know anything about business. I just had a dream, and I had a lot of good people around me, and I fought through the really tough times, and I learned from scratch. I mean, like, I just dug in, and I took my hits, and I had plenty of them, and It wasn't easy.
So tell me a little bit about, like, I'm imagining you in the brand new Uptown, the early 70s. You've got this little space and 30 seats, and you have this passion for Cajun food and all different kinds of food probably as well, but this specific passion for Cajun food, and you're trying to figure out how to make it. What does that look like? I mean, I sort of picture you in a small kitchen with a cookbook open and just like screwing around and then putting something out for folks and seeing if they like it. I mean, who ate your first dishes when you tried this?
I would say the first Cajun dishes that I really attempted were gumbo and etouffee. And a woman named Annika Riley was around and a friend of mine at the time, and she had spent a lot of time in New Orleans and was also a very excellent cook herself. And so, she worked with me, and we taught me about etouffee and taught me about Cajun roux, taught me really about the flavors of New Orleans and Louisiana. New Orleans really is more Creole. I mean, it's city food. And Louisiana and the back country is really more Cajun. So, which is also an adaptation of French cuisine. So between cookbooks and Paul Prudhomme videos and people around me, I just learned the basics, and I just hit and miss and tried a lot.
So did anyone ever say to you in those early years, why in the world are you in Indiana, a northern Indiana boy, cooking Cajun food?
Yes, they did. And people still do. I mean, they say, or a lot of people come up here that are very familiar with Louisiana and Cajun food and gumbos, and a lot of people who live in New Orleans, and so they're always suspect.
Right.
And put me to the test and come out and talk to me, or I come out and talk to them, and usually we have a great time. I guess I've really adapted the Cajun Louisiana cooking more or less to a style that I feel like, I mean, it's kind of my own version. It's like chili. I mean, everybody has their favorite chili. Same with gumbos. So I don't really claim to be authentic. I just kind of claim to be a lover of the cuisine and the flavors. And more than anything, it's taught me how to cook and about flavors and ingredients. And so I use it. I mean, the Uptown has never been, it's not nouvelle cuisine, you know. So I like simple. I like the food to express itself. I like family style. I just try to do what's in my own toolbox the best I can. And so far, it's. I mean, with a little bit of luck, I mean, it's worked out.
So tell us a little bit about the evolution over the course of the last 40 years, from those early years to where the Uptown is now. Obviously, there's hundreds of stories in there. Yeah. But are there any stories that really help the listener to understand kind of where you are now as compared to where you were then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd say the first thing is just the level of the culture of food in the United States when I began was just nothing. I mean, other than like Louisiana, you know, it was just TV dinners and yogurt. I always like to tell the story that, yogurt was a left-wing, very outside food. I mean, people had no idea. I mean, even though I did omelets and biscuits and gravy, I tried to put a little panache in them. And when I began with the Uptown in '76, I kind of hit the crest of a wave that was just beginning. Yeah. I think the food culture from '76 to 2018 in this country has just gone to the sky. I mean, there was no Food Network. I mean, there's 8 zillion chefs. There's many culinary schools. I mean, there was nothing.
Yeah.
This was a barren landscape with food, but I think, there was no Southwest cuisine. There was no California cuisine. These things have all evolved kind of along the same timeline as myself and the Uptown. So I feel like, I've just grown along with it. So the Uptown, obviously with 30 seats, it doesn't take much to pack the place, but it was very popular from the beginning. And so a guy that had just bought the Allen building where I am now on Kirkwood came down and talked to me about moving into half of the ground floor.
Yeah.
And, I needed the space, so I told him, I'd love to. And so at that point, I moved in '84 to where I am now, half. So maybe 110 seats. I got a beer and wine license. I started opening more for dinner. I really quit the late night thing pretty early because it lost its charm quickly.
In a college town, when you're open late at night, it's a lot of sort of drunk college kids.
It's crazy, yeah. And
right.
even though I was barely out, I mean, it was just too much.
Yeah.
And so I moved where I am in '84 and opened a beer and wine. I had a little beer and wine bar, open for dinner, and really kind of took full shot, at the Cajun food for dinner.
Yeah.
So gumbos, etouffees, blackened fish, and just kind of rode the wave from there until about 6 years ago when I took over the whole ground floor of the Allen building and got the 3-way liquor license and renovated the whole space, opened the cocktail bar, have now 250 seats, beautiful cocktail bar. Really feel like I've grown up, and I feel very proud of the restaurant, the environment. The last 10 years have probably been the most fun, and really feel like I've been able to reap what my original vision was, which was kind of to be like the Commander's Palace in New Orleans, a really classic, independent-owned restaurant. I'm really not interested in having 10
Uptowns everywhere.
I don't want, I'm really happy with one place and trying to get, it's kind of like a painting I've been working on, and I really try to keep evolving it. I think that's important too, I think. For a long time, I feel like I was just going stale, and once the cocktail bar opened up and I saw what the next step in evolution was, it just brought life back into me and my inspiration for food, service, hospitality, and really creating an environment that's warm and welcoming and a big part of the soul of this community.
And I think you've done that marvelously. I think that the Uptown has all those things you just described, which sometimes when we're in the middle of it, we think it has it, but someone from the outside doesn't agree necessarily. Yeah. And I think that the art form that is your restaurant, not only the food itself, which has an art form, but also the visual space that you've now created with that renovation, which really doubled the space, and I would imagine was a real gut check for you. I mean, was that a tough decision to invest those kinds of dollars into that change?
It was something I had been thinking about and had talked to my landlord about the possibility if my neighbor decided not to renew his lease that I would be interested in taking it over. But it was also a time in the States where we had hit that low economic downturn and people were really scared and bailing out and not starting new stuff. And then all of a sudden my neighbor threw in the towel. And so it was either take it or lose it.
Take it then or don't, yeah.
And so I just jumped, and luckily at the same point in time, the state was auctioning off new liquor licenses, which means they only offer a three-way liquor license in a limited supply depending on your population.
And just to describe what three-way means, that means you can serve
beer, wine, and spirits.
And spirits, yeah. Yep.
And they're very expensive to buy on the market because there are only a few, and the number doesn't change only every 10 years. So I think this particular year was a census year, and we had 7 available. So you go up to Indianapolis and you bid with other people for these licenses. So they're still not cheap, but I basically think I got mine for a third of what the market value was.
Yeah, because it was that census year and they put new ones out.
Right, and so I felt like just the timing was auspicious and a little bit lucky. And then when I opened, it just felt like there weren't that many really adult bars in Bloomington for non-college, non-undergraduates. I think so from graduate students to professional people, it just blew out of the gates. I mean, and my business in these last 6 years has just been outstanding.
Yeah, well, good. You deserve that because it's a beautiful space, like I said, and it's a great experience in there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to ask Michael where he goes to eat when he's going somewhere else besides the Uptown, and we're going to talk a little bit about the food industry and some of the details that happen there. All right, we're back with Michael Cassady from the Uptown Café. And Michael, here's my question for you. Your wife's name is Crystal, and if you are taking her out on Valentine's Day or a really nice date somewhere, where do you guys go?
Really good question, Jeremy. Usually, these days, I'm 68 years old, so, and I come in early, and about 5 o'clock, after I've spent a couple hours at the bar, just sitting with my friends and talking, which has been very enjoyable lately. I'm pretty tired. So, and then we live a little outside of town, and it's in the woods, and it's very calming. So once I'm home, I'm kind of out of it. So, and also my wife is an excellent cook. But if we go out, I mean, I try in Bloomington. Man, I mean, I'm a simple man, but I mean, I go to C3 sometimes because it's out on the east side and it's quiet, and I can kind of get away a little bit. Or, you know, my friend Ray owns Mother Bear's Pizza. I go there sometimes. I try to see like what other chefs around town are doing. I mean, I've gone to Feast. I go to Finch's. When Seth had No Coast and when it was out on the east side, I'd go there. You know, I love Mexican food. I got a lot of Latino guys working in my kitchen, so I feel like, I mean, my joke is I have the best Mexican underground restaurant right there. So
All right. Yeah.
I don't know. I think, you know, that's about it.
Yeah. All right. So you've built this business over the course of time as a dad of 6-7 kids, right?
Six boys. Yeah.
6 boys. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of parenting while you own a business like you do?
Yeah, I can. It's kind of tough. I mean, I'm lucky that my wife is a very tolerable human being, and I married a little late. I was 38, and I married her, and she already had 4 sons. Mm-hmm. They were very, very young, and I grew up without a father, and it was my opportunity to jump right in, and so I did that, and it's wow. I mean, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And then we had my 2 youngest are my own sons, but I consider all my boys my own sons, and I'm they're a very talented, creative, very different group, and it's been thoroughly enjoyable. My wife was homeschooling the 4 boys when I married her, and so that was really a good thing because she, you know, her role was just dealing with the keeping the home fires burning and taking care of the boys, and mine was just, so we really had defined roles. I worked a lot, and she worked a lot, but we did, you know, totally different things, and so I'm grateful for that. I think it helped, and also having 6 children got me through a lot of pressure situations that maybe had I not had that responsibility, I could have bailed at times, you know, because, you know, nothing's easy and there are ups and downs and everything. But as the boys have gotten older and none of them live at home, I mean, Crystal does the books at the restaurant now and works with me and a little bit, and is, you know, a great advisor for me, and our life has changed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about food sourcing. Okay. I think that when you look at where food comes from, obviously there's this balance between this farm to table conversation all the way to, you know, the McDonald's of the world, and there's a spectrum that every restaurateur has to navigate. How do you navigate that food source conversation inside your own restaurant?
Well, you know, I try to buy, I mean, the highest quality ingredients I possibly can. So locally, you know, during the fresh produce season locally, I do my best. I mean, obviously I have a 250-seat restaurant, so there are a few farmers and farms that I have relationships with, and they know what kind of volume and what kind of quality I need, mm-hmm. and for how long I need it. So during the seasonality, I deal with them a lot and do what I can, and then I just also find purveyors whom I trust a lot. The food sourcing and quality of food. I think even there's a produce company in Indianapolis called Piazza. Mm-hmm. I deal with a mega food. It's really a transportation company, but Cisco. Mm-hmm. But there's 4 or 5, 6 different large food companies, and all of them have really evolved a lot over the years too. And the availability of organics, local. It's a competitive market now, way more than it used to be. So it's not as hard to find quality, local, or even regional fare. It just depends on what your standards are and who you want to deal with, and then either they can get it for you or I find it on my own.
Yeah, so you're balancing all that stuff.
I am, all the time.
I know I have to feed. I mean, how many plates a night does 250 seats tend to add up to? It seems like a lot of plates.
I'll give you an example. On our Sunday and Saturday brunches, Sunday brunch we're open for 5 hours. I do between probably 600 and 1,000 people in 5 hours.
Wow.
And that's our highest volume times. Mm-hmm. At dinner with 250 seats, maybe we turn the restaurant a couple times. So 300 to 500,
Right.
The weekdays, obviously are a little calmer, but I think the way Bloomington is evolving, it's been, I think when I first started, downtown, I've been downtown the whole life of the Uptown. Mm-hmm. Maybe there were 10 or 12 restaurants. I think lately around from Indiana to 10th Street to 3rd Street, west maybe to Rogers, I think there's something like 150 now.
Yeah, which
is great. I've gone from 6 employees to 100.
Wow.
And the 100 people that work for me, they make really good money, and they rent.
Yeah.
And so the vibrancy of the economy, they rent places or buy places, buy cars, and eat out at other places, and live in Ellettsville, Bloomington, north, south, east, west. And so it just seems like I know the town's growing, and I hope it's growing wisely. It's definitely the way better economy than I've ever seen here in my life,
Cool. We're going to take one more break, and then when we come back, we're going to ask you about being a business owner and some advice you might give to other folks who want to own businesses as well.
Okay.
All right, we're back with Michael Cassady of the Uptown Café. And Michael, let's talk a little bit about owning a business. You certainly have some expertise on the topic. You've owned a business for 40 years. You have 100 plus employees. If someone comes to you and says they want to start a restaurant, what are a couple of pieces of advice you have for them?
I would say to start out simple, to be small. To make sure you're financed properly. You need to be dedicated. There are going to be very tough times. You need to surround yourself with the best advisors possible, whether that be an accountant, an insurance man, other restaurateurs that you respect. You need to have people around you that you can talk to, help you through the tough times, and pay your bills. Try to really pay attention to learn your craft, but also learn the business end of things. It's start out simple.
Do you have a story of a time anywhere in the evolution of your business where one of your team members just pulled you out of a hole or just saved you from some pitfall that you were about to dive into?
I had a lot of pitfalls. I would say, yeah. I had a very close relationship with my original insurance man. His name was Marty Bassett, and he always believed in me, and he authentically and sincerely believed in me, and he was just someone I turned to whenever I had doubts. I needed financial guidance. Where do I go? So he was just generally very, very helpful.
I think with that kind of thing, when you find one person you really trust in that group of people that you want to have a team as a business owner, then you can ask them who they trust for the other things.
Correct.
If you have an attorney you trust, then you can ask about insurance or financing or all the other things you have to deal with. It really only takes one or two people that you truly trust to build a team of people that represent those same kind of ideals.
Right, and because you're right. He talked to me about lawyers that would be good for me, accountants that would be good for me. He was older than I was, and I've had a lot of people. Those people that I brought in early are still kind of my inner circle, and I still utilize them all the time. And the same goes within your business. If you're starting a new business, and if you're running the front of the house, and you have a chef, and you have managers, I think it's really important that you really interview them thoroughly. They know who you are, what you want. You're clear about choosing the right people. And if you don't, if things aren't working out, to be as clear as possible, and just try to find the right people to surround yourself with that you can trust, and believe in each other.
Mm-hmm. When you realize that somebody's on your team that's not working, how do you navigate that?
That's very tough too, because you work with people, and you have close bonds, and at the same time, you're running a business that's responsible. Obviously, it's your child. It feeds however 10, 20, 30, 100 other people.
Yeah.
So it's very important. If there's something that's not working, I think that you need to be transparent. You need to talk and communicate to that person. And if it's not going to work out, then you need to deal with it.
Yeah.
Same. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have 6 sons too, and it's kind of like my business is a family business, and I also have family in the business. And that's just a double-edged sword. It's a business, and the business feeds the family. So it's just very important that everyone is clear and there are boundaries. I have an advisor right now who's helping me, and this just doesn't stop for me. I see a therapist, and I see a therapist with my managers. So I also have a safe place where I can go with my managers, and we talk about what's going on, how are you doing, how am I doing, how we feel about each other. And I have a business consultant that's an expert in family businesses to try to create boundaries where we meet, and my managers and I meet, and we try to really communicate about this.
So
critical.
That helps to not have to be in those as many of those situations where you have to deal with a major personnel problem because you're addressing them ahead of times in some ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What does success look like? What is a successful day? Not success in some broad idea of the term, but like in a real specific way. What does a successful moment for you look like?
Really, it's just coming in and seeing all the pieces that I have in place, that my dishwashers, my line cooks, my managers. I'm around people that I enjoy. It's not like, there's always tribulations like water leaks and the dishwasher went down or the computer crashed. But so a really good day is that none of those things happen and that the restaurant's open. I have really great front of the house managers. I mean, Victor, my daytime manager, is just a joy for me to be around him, and he's such a hospitalitarian. And I think over the years, I think right now I feel like I have the best overall staff I've ever had. I feel like I have really friendly, competent people. Not everybody's on the same level, but I have a level of competence and a really friendly, warm atmosphere. I like when the music's going, and the place is just humming along. The food looks good. I'm not seeing a lot of. I mean, I'm pretty picky, and so if the tables aren't bussed or I see, it's just really nice to see it flowing and the energy. I mean, you asked me one time where I go out to eat, and I told you a few places, and there are a lot of places that I can go and have a quiet dinner, but part of what I really love about the Uptown and my own place is it feels like Chicago to me, or it feels like I like the energy. So sometimes, honestly, it's hard for me to leave. I mean, and I'm enjoying it as kind of a customer. I mean, there are a lot of nice restaurants and great food and great chefs, but I really like the vibe I've created, and I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I don't know, it's just the kind of atmosphere. I like the paintings, I like the socialness of it, and like I said, I named it originally the Uptown Café, almost subconsciously, not knowing in 1976. I knew I didn't want to be a 70s fern bar.
Right.
And I wanted to create an urban up-tempo environment. Mm-hmm. Bloomington was always a very laid-back place, and I love that.
Yeah.
But I like when the town's really happening.
It has a vibration to it.
And I like in the Uptown, I like the energy.
It does.
It's not a nightclub, and it's not a dance hall, but it's just a restaurant that's it's got more layers than just fine dining and food. It's got, nice electrifying music in the background, and it's noisy and crazy at times, but I don't know. I like that part of it.
Well, yeah, and that's what a success. It seems like a successful moment for you is sitting at that at the corner that you tend to sit at of the new bar that's on the new side, and just like watching the thing run and happen.
Yeah, I love having a beer and eating some good hot pepper chicken and watching a soccer game and just feeling the energy of the restaurant. It's really thrilling at times.
That's cool.
I don't come in a lot at night anymore, but when I do, I'm almost, my mind's blown.
Yeah, right. Because it's this thing that's running on its own.
And that's success for me. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, I'm more prosperous than I've ever been, but I'm happier and really more satisfied, and I'm feeling more complete in my painting,
That's so cool. So then that brings us to really the last question, which is, what does the Uptown look like in 5 years?
That's a really good question, too. Yeah, like I said, I'm 68, and I don't really want to sell the place. I don't really, and that's also another reason why I have this consultant that I brought in, because I'm trying to figure out like what I'm going to do and how I'm going to bring my family into it. And I do have one son coming back from California, and my idea is that he kind of over the next few years, teach him kind of what I do, and ultimately it'll be more in his hands that I can I'm working on getting away. Like I said, I still enjoy it, but my plan, I'd like to go to Europe, and I'd like to do a few things that maybe I could take some chances and leave for a longer period of time, and it would be more in his hands. So, and my whole family. I don't mean to
put it on one person.
Put it on one
it's
person,
everybody.
but as far as just overseeing the place, I feel like he can handle it for the family and for the community. I just kind of want it to stay the same, to grow within itself, like I feel like we've done. I mean, we've evolved, but it's always kind of it's just a different version of itself.
Yeah. Well, I hope that in 5 years we're talking about many trips to Barcelona to see a Clásico, and hopefully you've done that at least a couple times at that point.
That would be very appealing to me.
So, Michael, if someone wants to come see this painting we've been describing, your restaurant here in Bloomington, how can they connect and do so?
Yeah, I'm at 102 East Kirkwood in Bloomington. I have a Facebook page, Michael's Uptown Café Facebook. I have a website, the-uptown.com. Instagram, Uptown Cafe, and that's it. But it's always better to come in person. I think you see the real deal. So if you're in Bloomington or coming to Bloomington, I think you ought to check it out because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you for everything you do for our community and as just creating a absolutely beautiful restaurant from beginning to end. Thank you so much also for spending a little bit of time talking with us here on Scratch Entrepreneur.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. It's a joy to talk to you always.
Special thanks to Michael Cassady for taking the time to share the Uptown Cafe story with us. This show was produced and edited by me, Jeremy Goodrich. The music is by my high school buddy, Mark Vinton. In high school, we played a lot of soccer together. I was the goalie, and he was the sweeper. For anyone who understands that relationship, it makes total sense why we're still friends 25 years later. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple things we need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can hear future episodes as soon as we release them. While you're there, please give the show a review. We'd love to know what you liked, what you didn't, and what you want to hear next. Until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.